Hello, everybody. Welcome to the One Nation of Gamers Summer Circuit Feature Tournament number 4. I'm TJ, joined once again by Trump. Trump, how are you doing on this beautiful Saturday morning?
Ah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's how he's doing on this beautiful Saturday morning. Today we're going to be broadcasting Group B of the feature tournament number 4. Keep in mind, guys, this is the final feature tournament, the final One Nation of Gamers event before the grand final at PAX. The players that will be competing today are Strifecro and Dart, which will be the first matchup, and Roger and Weasel. In Group A yesterday, we saw Chalky and Silent Storm make it through to the playoff stage that will be happening on Sunday. And today we'll find two more players that will join them in that semifinals. And of course, we have 6 players that have qualified for PAX so far. Of course, Calento and Pavel, the feature number 1 and 2 tournament winners. Of course, Trump, who won the feature tournament number 3. From GEICO points, we have Wafster, Nostum, Hoy, and second most GEICO points for EU is still up for grabs, as well as the feature tournament number 4 winner, of course. So one of the players that's competing today, Roger, does have a chance to take second and qualify for the grand finals at PAX. So he'll be a player to definitely watch today. If he makes top 2, he's guaranteed a spot at the grand final. So lots on the line for these players today. Trump, are you excited to watch some card slinging action?
If there's something worth waking up at 9 a.m. Pacific for, it's watching some top tier Hearthstone play. And right away, I can actually look at Strifecro, and he's kind of gone the way of Silent Storm as yesterday. He's bringing a very unique lineup.
Yeah, Paladin is being thrown in there. And Hunter, a little different from Silent Storm. Silent Storm rarely plays Hunter, if ever. But yeah, it's a little bit of a different lineup. And basically nowadays, if you're not bringing Warrior, you're sort of going against the grain. We saw every player but Silent Storm bring Warrior yesterday, and we're seeing every player but Strifecro bring Warrior today. So a little bit interesting story. Of course, Strifecro was one of the invited players for the week. Dart qualified for the feature tournament through points. I believe he was the for the week or for the 2 weeks. So NA in EU qualifier number 7 and 8. He was the top points earner. So that's how he got his spot today. It's going to be a tough road for him, though, going up against Strifecro, who is one of the best players in the competitive scene right now, in his first matchup of the feature tournament. It's going to be a really tough road for him.
Yeah, it's especially a big surprise to see one of the players ranked so highly by pretty much everyone not bring pretty much the best deck ranked by most everyone. And even past that, he's brought a deck which I would consider to be in the 30 percentile, perhaps, range against Warrior, that Paladin deck. I don't know if it's going to be face Paladin or if it's going to be mid-range Paladin. I I've seen Strifecro kind of take a liking to the mid-range Paladin,
Yeah.
but either one seems to me to be weak against Patron.
So there's this the Paladin deck that Silent Storm was playing yesterday in Group A is taking the ladder by storm at the moment. I'm playing a lot of ladder with it over the past couple of days. I've seen so many players playing the exact same list nearly. We saw the Rat playing it in one of the qualifiers on Thursday. Of course, Silent Storm was the player who piloted it to a semifinals berth yesterday. Also, he took it to rank 1 a little bit earlier in the season. I saw Just Saying playing against me. We were playing nearly the exact same lineups. It seemed card for card. We got through most of our decks too, so it was interesting to see. Also, Jab is a player that I saw. He made a post on Twitter who he won a Hearth Mindset tournament or took top place in a Hearth Mindset tournament with that list. So it's starting to pick up steam. Players are realizing that mid-range Paladin, if you build it correctly, actually isn't as bad against Patron as people were initially starting to say because of the dudes and you don't put on enough pressure early on. But this deck does, and I'm curious to see if that's the Paladin deck that Strifecro's going to go with. Dart, on the other hand, he's got a Rogue, Chump.
Yeah, man. Yesterday we talked a little bit about Rogue and how it was great against the classes that weren't seen very often. And your Dart's got a really good class to line up Rogue against the Paladin. One of the reasons why the matchup is so good is because they play their muster, which is their really good card. You play a fan, you kill their stuff, you draw a card. Feels really good when that happens. Feels really bad when you're a Paladin.
Yeah, you're basically not killing it all for free, but you gain so much tempo just based off of that play alone. And if you can couple that with like a prep and build up something on the board, like he plays Mustard Battle, you coin out Violet Teacher, prep Phantom Knives, all of a sudden the Paladin's pretty much in a really losing position. So the players are prepping right now, so we should be jumping into the first matchup in just a moment. There we go. Looks like Dart's going to throw out the Warrior first, and Strifecro is going to throw out the Hunter. And judging by that opening hand, looks like it's a very aggressive Hunter. Leopard Gnomes plus Abusive Sergeants in the opening hand.
Yep, sure looks like maximum scummage to me. It is still possible for it to be Hybrid Hunter. Hybrid Hunter does also run Leopard Gnome Abusive Sergeant sometimes.
Yeah, I think the aggressive Hunter, there's not many people that bring a full aggressive Hunter, the full face Hunter anymore in tournament settings. It's best when it's a surprise, like when people don't expect it. But a lot of times there are some hybrid elements thrown in, at least some shredders, maybe high mains. So, and Arcane Golem as well. So a more aggressive variant, but we'll have to see as we get deeper into this deck.
That's right. Yesterday, I've learned some interesting stats from Monk that of all the type of hunters, I would have guessed mid-range was best, and then hybrid, and then face. But it turns out that face hunter actually has the highest win rate against warriors. So it's maybe Strifecro knows something ahead of time.
Yeah, it's interesting. It is a relatively small sample size. I believe it was over like 35 games, but that's large enough to know that it's pretty good. At least one of the best against the warrior player. And
Yeah, wow, this is a surprise already. So I was looking at Dart's hand and I was like, wow, that's one of the best warrior hands I could possibly imagine against the hunter. He still coins out the axe instead of playing the armor smith, though. That the armor smith seems like it would be the more standard play.
yeah, interesting. I mean, I guess what are you expecting as a turn 2 play from? Yeah. I get Armor Smith seems like the best because if he plays Haunter Creeper, then you can axe up and you already have the Haunter Creeper on the board to immediately kill off one of the 1/1s. If he plays Knife Juggler, you can just go ahead and play the axe next turn regardless, so it would match up even well. Interesting choice, yeah, but we'll have to see how that's going to affect him as the game goes on. He effectively just takes the same amount of damage because the Leopard Gnome would have hit in for 1 anyway.
Yep. And this is again an interesting choice to break the creeper. Didn't have to do it this turn. By doing it, he basically adds 1 attack to Strifecro's board, but it does make it so that the Armor Smith can just kill something. One of the reasons to coin out the axe instead of the Armor Smith would be to counter exactly one of 2 plays. One is Glaive Zuka, which seems like it would be difficult to beat anyways, and the other one is Abusive Sergeant, which Strifecro actually had in his opening hand and mulliganed away.
Yeah, he did. It's a little bit awkward if you don't pick up the second 1-drop because you float a mana on turn 2. Curving out well is and dealing your damage to the face efficiently is one of the keys to winning this matchup, especially because every point of damage matters.
That's
Wow,
right, it's a big
Opsu
deal.
saved the second Armor Smith.
Yeah, that's also a little bit of a surprise. There's like 2 main philosophies in Patron Warrior in this matchup. One is to play the Armor Smith as fast as possible because it's so good early. It deals with all the 1 attack or 1 health minions. The other is to try to save them and then get the Whirlwind value off. It turns out to often not be the case where you can actually survive enough to use the Armor Smith. And here we've got the very early Arcane Golem. People like way back then said, okay, it's not an early game play, but those hunter decks just get really quick. And turns out it's completely valid to play Arcane Golem on turn 3 or 4.
Yeah, going into turn 5, you're not really ramping him into too much. Dart does have a decent play here with the... Wow! Okay. He's going to play the Armor Smith after. I guess that's the right play since there's still an axe equipped. No, he doesn't play the Armor Smith at all. Pretty
He's really
interesting.
looking to get maximum value out of the Armor Smith. So
Yeah.
one of the things about this matchup is you're almost always looking to top deck the second Armor Smith at some point to stabilize, and Dart's basically holding that Armor Smith as his ace in the hole. I would have used the first armor smith really quickly. I probably would have even used the second one pretty quickly, just because I feel like it contests the board better. But this is a cool line of play.
Yeah, second Arcane Golem would have traded into it, but Armorsmith it contests into things like if you had played a Wolf Rider instead of having to use a Whirlwind or attacking into it, you would have been able to just use the Armorsmith. So um, Dart is still in a pretty decent position though. This is going to allow him to get battle value out of the battle rage. He's still going to be able to execute both Death Bites in the hand. Not that great because he doesn't really have any proactive ways to deal with threats. He's going to have to take damage in order to get through some of these creatures, but he hasn't managed to take that much damage so far. It's turn 6. He's at 17 or 18 effective health, 19 after he smashed in the Armor Smith. So he's still in an okay position. It's just going to depend on his next couple of draws, I think.
Yeah, right now we kind of see how the game could be won by either side. Dart is at a relatively high total of health, but his hand is not really there. Despite the Frolic Berserker develop his board really nicely. We can see that Strifecro, he only needs, if we count that as 10 damage with a skill command, the quick shot, and the hero power, he's only 4 damage off, but that 4 damage off looks like an eternity from here.
Yeah. And Paladin Treader is a good pickup. This is one of those elements that even aggressive hunters are putting into the deck now just because it's such a solid 4-drop. You're guaranteed to pretty much get at least some damage in because you have to get through both iterations of it, so it's just a really sticky creature, sort of in a similar vein to Haunted Creeper, where it's really tough to remove in its entirety. Grim Patron's actually a fantastic pickup for Dart off the top because this is going to allow him to fight back really hard. He's at 12 health, which is a little bit low, but he's got so much damage on the board, he's going to start to put Strifecro on a clock as well.
Yep. The problem is there doesn't seem to be a way to take care of the Shredder without taking either 4 or without losing the frothing. The frothing is really desirable to keep because it probably moves the lethal clock up by at least a turn. So this is going to be it for Strifecro. He needs to get the amount to finish him. Dart will be at 8 with the Shredder hit no matter what. Unless, unless Dart decides to kill off the Shredder. And 10 is going to be just a doggy away or some other charger. Oh, that's really close. No beast, unfortunately.
6, 9, 12, that's still it.
That's exactly it.
Exact lethal. Wow, even without the beast, he still has exactly enough. And it looks like Dart is going to get punished for not dealing with this. I believe it was a calculated risk. He put Dart on a 2-turn clock. Dart put Strifecro on a 2-turn clock, realizing that it was going to be way too hard for Strifecro to clear this board. So he was just hoping that he didn't have the damage that he needed in hand to be able to deal with it. And Strifecro is going to take game 1, and we see exactly why that this matchup is favored for Face Hunter. Even if you have the double Armor Smith opening with ways to deal with the first couple of threats, there's just so much damage packed into the deck. At some point, you need to go on the aggressive. You need to start applying pressure to the Hunter. And if they have the damage to close you out when you start to go on the offensive, then that's exactly what happens, is what we saw right there.
Yeah, that was quite a wonder. Part of it is because Strifecro had like the quote-unquote durable Arcane Golem. It actually has 2 health, and he just played so aggressively early on. Managed to draw into the Paladin Shredder, which is probably the one more slow-lasting card in his deck. And importantly, he got in that 4 damage with Shredder. That's one of the dangers of playing an aggressive deck and putting in the Shredder, that you don't actually get any damage in, but it is sticky, and Dart could have cleared it, but clearing it means he loses the Frothing Berserker, or he hits into it, but you still get a guy, and it might be ending up taking net more damage because you could get a 3-2, so you end up taking 7. Anyways, looks like Dart's got a Zoo against what seems to be a mid-range Paladin, this time with the Quartermasters.
Yeah, so it's a little bit different of a deck, and this is sort of the classic Strifecro deck. He's been at the forefront of not really innovation, but sort of refinement, I guess is the right word for mid-range paladin lists, and this is definitely the Strifecro special. Now, I think Dart was hoping for a different matchup here. This is a pretty decent matchup for Paladin because they have a lot of tools to fight for the board early on against Zoo. Zoo, of course, still usually has more board control tools, but
But I actually want to take a moment to just talk about how the game has already shifted a lot based off of Dart's decision not to coin out a 2-drop. By not doing so, he's allowed the Knife Juggler to come onto the board uncontested, which means that Muster for Battle has the potential to do insane things. It's often difficult to line up the Muster and the Knife Juggler. The Imp Gang Boss, though, is a pretty good counter to the Muster for Battle.
yeah, the thing is the imps spawn before the next juggle comes out, so it still usually ends up being
Ugh.
a net gain for the paladin in the situation. That's why Strifecro didn't really hesitate, because you can usually snipe off a couple of these and see it ends up being sort of just a one-for-one trade with Knife Juggler into Imp Gang Boss, which is a really great trade, trading a 2-drop into one of the most valuable 3-drops for Warlock.
That's right. There are quite a few ways that could have gone, and that went about the best way it could have.
Mm-hmm.
Strifecro with an interesting addition to the deck, the Sunwalker. A bit more of a mid-range, or more of a control-ish than a mid-range card, but you can definitely tweak all these paladins to a little bit more of a different direction.
Yeah. So Strifecro going to play the Knife Juggler as opposed to the Piloted Shredder because he's really setting up for the Quartermaster next turn. He was hoping that one of the juggles would hit, so he'd only have to trade in one to be able to have 3 on the board. I was expecting him to go for that play or play Paladin Shredder, but not trade in and force Dart to be the one who trades into the 1/1s, which he'd be inclined to trade into the Paladin Shredder at that stage.
Definitely makes sense.
Got a 4.
Big move. The Quartermaster, though, even hitting only 2 guys, that's a good turn.
That's value right there. One of them's golden because he had a golden hero portrait, but no golden muster for battle. Strifecro's usually doesn't play with any golden cards because he doesn't like to give any type of informational advantage over to his opponent. Sort of a min-maxing approach.
Yeah, makes sense. It's definitely makes sense. There's some stories from other card games and foils where I can go into that. Yeah, definitely something nice to not have to worry about which card to play.
Mm-hmm. Now this is an interesting card that we haven't seen very much in mid-range Paladin, the Sunwalker. It used to be played in like Ramp Druid sometimes, but this is the first time I've seen it in a long time. I've seen it played in Redemption Paladin decks. I don't know if Strifecro is going to be running Redemption, but it's cool to see Sunwalker sort of make a return.
It is. I wonder if it replaces Sludge Belcher, just because the Sunwalker is a lot better against Patron Warrior.
Yeah,
it's unlikely that you could ever replace Sludge Belcher, but if there is a Sunwalker, I would accept Strifecro possibly not running 2 Sludge Belcher.
Paladin is a deck that's pretty chock full of 5-drops with Quartermasters, usually Lotheb and Harrison. So there is a chance that maybe he thought he was too strapped for the 5-drops, and also, like you said, not having that slime pop out is a lot better against Patron. You still have to sort of use multiple resources to get the Divine Shield off.
Looks like off of that 4 Implosion, and also just Dart having buffs for that afterwards, he's managed to wrest board control. This battle is just all about the board control fight, and Dart does have the Doomguard to follow up this Void Caller. However, Strifecro just made a really strong turn off of pretty much basic plays here. Just really strong on-curve cards.
Yeah, Dr. Boom as well with a Doomguard turn. Really powerful. Strifecro does have some ways to fight back. Similar to cards like Sprint, Lay on Hands is one of those cards where you usually try and use it as late as you can possibly get away with.
Right, that
Um,
5 drop is a really good draw since it
yeah,
matches so well with his 3. So he's just continuously been spending his mana, like every single point of it, every single turn. Dart
yeah,
has as well, so this has been a very high-powered game in terms of both decks.
yeah. Boombot hits face. That's exactly where he wanted to go. One to face is best case scenario. It's so much about the board in this matchup. And yeah, another sort of big swing here for Strifecro. Very back and forth, and that's usually how this matchup goes. The Paladin
That's right.
usually has higher value cards on average, like in the later games when both players are sort of getting thinning out their hands a little bit. Usually the Paladin's cards are a little bit higher quality overall. But we'll see. Dark gets a load of his own.
That turn from Strifecro was so big. He just played something like the 2 cards, the 5/5 and the 3/3 are 8/8, but he subtracted 6 attack from the opponent. So that's basically playing uh, plus 6, 8, like 22 worth of stats on turn 8, and that's a really big deal. It doesn't even matter what the health points of each player is at this point. Like sometimes you can get into a point where one side has pressured enough and gotten enough of an early game advantage, but in this case, it truly showcases just how irrelevant the life totals on both sides are. It's just all about the board, of which Strifecro looks like he's continuing his domination over.
Yeah, Aldor Peacekeeper picking up a creature at all on that turn was really important, and Aldor Peacekeeper was one of the best. Because once again, it allows him to just trade efficiently on the board. He's in a fantastic board position with lay on hands lined up for next turn to fill up his hand. And, power overwhelming's good. Oh, wow. This is actually could be another swing with Knife Juggler. Power overwhelming is going to be able to take out the Lotheb plus get a couple juggles at the end of the turn.
Yeah, Dart's really looking to take out the Fairy Dragon with that. Correctly does the Power Overwhelming first, doesn't want the Knife Juggler to hit the Lotheb. And if he can take out the 3/1 and the 1/1, then this will be a pretty big deal.
Got the 1/1 and face. Not really what he wanted.
Well, 1 out of 2 ain't bad, I suppose. Um, this is where Dart's advantage starts kicking in. The hero power from the Warlock compensates for the lower quality of the cards, but this is also where Strifecro's Lay on Hands is going to give him the fuel needed to finish it, usually. Ooh, okay.
Tyrion.
Oh man,
Dr.
we got some
Wow.
powerhouses.
Those are like 3 of the best cards you can pick up at this stage. Because next turn, he pretty much can get a full board clear regardless of what happens, unless something big comes out with Truce over Consecration, and then back it up with big threats. Ooh, Egg is a Consecration protection, and he picks up second Power Overwhelming.
Yep. The problem with Dart, though, is that on this turn he only spent 5 of his mana, whereas I believe, and this is kind of astounding, I believe that Strifecro has spent every single point of mana every single every single turn, other than turn 1.
Dat mana usage.
That just goes to show how the Paladin is really consistent in being able to use its mana every single turn, and that's how you fight for board, and that's how you generally are favored against Zoo.
Yeah, there was one turn where he was Lothebbed that he didn't use at all, but that was the only turn where he didn't utilize his full mana. And it was because he just wasn't able to. He had the power to do it, but he was Lothebbed, so he could not use a land hand set.
Yep. Looks like we got arrows flying everywhere, and Strifecro's screen is kind of stuck from the observer point of view right now. But I have to imagine Dart's not looking too good. I know he top deck Defender of Argus and Void Walker, and that isn't really going to contest the board by itself.
Yeah, we'll try and get that fixed in just a second. Yeah. Oh. We're going to have to use our imagination. So, Strifecro looked like he played Dr. Boom. So that seems to be on the board.
Yeah, I have to imagine he
very
played
least.
Tyrion Fordring last turn and made it
And
die.
that's game. Yeah.
Yep.
And it looks like we just saw maybe a defeat screen.
Wouldn't surprise me.
We'll have to get confirmation on that in just a moment. Yeah, something happened with the spectator mode that didn't allow us to watch the end of that game. Oh, And it looks like we're back. I think Strifecro did manage to take the win with that with his Paladin at the end there. I think I saw
Yeah,
the
there's no way that Strifecro could lose from that position.
yeah. Yep. So it looks like he will 99% sure take a 2-0 lead in the series with only Warlock remaining.
Yep, we don't know what type of warlock it is yet, but I have to imagine any type of warlock is favored against when you have to when you only have to win once out of three. Both Zoo and Handlock have very strong and reasonable possibilities against
Hmm.
all three of Dart's decks.
Yeah, I feel like Strifecro tends to lean more towards Zoo, but I mean he'll play anything. I guess that's one of his strengths as a player. He adapts really well, and uh, he could play Malagos Warlock. He could play Handlock. He could play Demon Zoo.
Yeah, I
Lots of
do think
opportunities.
it's pretty important to be able to play all types of warlock, just because there are so many different viable types of warlock, and picking the one that happens to be best against the field at any given time is really useful, and not being 100% of a class is really helpful, so that people don't start keeping BGH against you.
Yeah. All right. So it looks like it is going to be a Zoo Mirror matchup, and the players have very similar hands early on. Just Dart sort of gets that head start. That's the dream start that you want to have as the Zoo player, the Woodwalker Flame Imp on turn one.
Yeah, I mean, past that though, you have the two 1 drops on turn one, you have the 2 drop, you have the 3 drop, and it's a really strong 2 drop and a 3 drop. Dart's looking in a pretty comfortable position, so this one is up to Strifecro to come back from. It's possible to come back from this. It usually requires a fairly good implosion. Strifecro, though, did have a good 2 drop into a 3 drop into a 4 drop, and it looks like he's going to have something good on 5. So this, even though he stumbled on the turn 1 drop, we're gonna see whether or not that is big enough for him to not be able to recover from.
Yeah. So looking at the rest of their lineups, I mean, Dart, if he wins this game, this is sort of the test for him because his other two decks do pretty well against the Zoo. He's got Patron Warrior and he's got Rogue, which both have the potential, definitely close matchups against the Zoo Warlock. So this is going to be the test. He really needs to win this one. The sort of 50-50 matchup, the mirror where both players have pretty much the same decks, very even lineups. This is going to be sort of the test for Dart.
That's right. I actually, just because Monk has all sorts of useful stats, I made sure to ask him about the Patron one the other day. And turns out that Patron versus Zoo is very, very close to an even matchup, and a lot of games have been played with that.
All right. Yeah. They have a lot of tools, but at the same time, Zoo can outpressure them early on. They can't make it to that point of stabilization before the Zoo can put on a lot of pressure, then it can be tough. But Strifecro still in a rough spot. It's hard to find a good implosion target here. You mentioned that usually a good implosion is what you need to come back on the board, but if you implode the Imp Gang boss and you hit for 2, then you're in a rough spot because you're basically giving him an Imp and only spawning 2 of your own, which is not that great of a swing. It's going to be hard to sort of rely on that to hit for 4.
That's right, and it's very difficult to swallow the other play as well, which is Flame Imp Imp Gang Boss, because the Flame Imp just gets killed by the opponent's Imp Gang Boss. Looks like Strifecro is just gonna decide to risk it all because he feels like the chance. Oh my gosh!
Oh!
And that is a really big deal. Dart just flung back in his chair, reeling at that one. That's the
Yeah.
way he can catch up in this matchup. One of the ways.
Dart can't be too upset because Dart did have a 4 implosion himself in the early matchup, so both players have used 1 implosion. Both players have hit for 4 with their implosions, so as far as implosions go, it's been even.
It's been a very good card. Speaking of good cards, I wonder if either one is running Bane of Doom, and Bane of Doom sure is going to get a lot better after TGT comes out. You've seen that 6/8 vanilla demon?
Yeah, that's well, there also is a couple that are making Bane of Doom a little worse. The Demon Guard, Wrath Guard. The 4-3 that silences a
Uh,
demon.
well, it's probably a good demon to get. Probably.
Yeah,
Sometimes it
it's
loses you
decent.
the game, I guess.
It's the same as Succubus, I suppose, with the being a 4-3. There's also another one that's not that good, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But
Yeah,
yeah, the
could beat the
overall quality is
5-4.
gonna be
It's
better.
still good.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's good as well. All right,
All
well,
right,
pretty
looks
much at
like
an
both
even
sides have
board state.
equalized a bit. It's a very close one. Both sides with Mal'Ganis, both guys with an Imp Gang boss. But Strifecro is the one with initiative here. He has to make the decision on whether or not he wants to lead with the Knife Juggler and risk hitting the Imp Gang boss or just Abusive Sergeant first. And he's going to choose to try not to risk getting a 1-1. You can see that Strifecro's risk management is coming into play here. Like on turn 4, he was like, okay, my chance of losing is off the charts, so I've got to take a big risk. I've got to implosion that. But this time, I'm pretty clearly in the lead now, so all I'm going to have to do is just make sure nothing disastrous happens. And this game, which looked to be darts from the early game, Strifecro swings it back.
Yeah, and a really big swing as well. Just playing a Lotheb, like, Zoo versus Zoo, usually the player that swarms is the player that wins. Because it's so hard to deal with multiple relatively large threats. Like, even though a Flame Whip is only a 3-2, that 3-2 getting in on a Zoo Warlock is really strong because they're taking so much damage just by tapping themselves. And Strifecro just swarming the board. It's so tough for Zoo Warlocks to deal with this when they're behind. The only tool that they have to come back on board is usually like Implosion, sometimes Doomguard, but that's only a one target removal sort of.
That's right. Like sometimes it's that, sometimes it's with Knife Juggler, sometimes the big swings are also with Void Caller and Doomguard. But at one point you reach a critical mass, and I think Strifecro reached that point about 1 or 2 turns ago, where you just have so much stuff on the board that's impossible to come back unless you're being hipster and running like a Shadow Flame or a Hellfire, which some Zoo decks do tech in, but we haven't seen it from either player.
Yeah, and it looks like Dart, in order to just survive, he has to Doomguard, which is going to discard both Void Caller and Mal'Ganis. So that's going to be rough, and that's actually going to be it. Even with just Defender of Argus, without the Doomguard top deck, that would have been enough. So Strifecro is going to win the series 3-0 over Dart, continuing our trend from yesterday, where a lot of the matches are ending in 3-0s.
Yeah, wow. Like, really, you bring any lineup against any lineup, and the chance of a 3-0 is very unlikely. But here we have it. Good job by Strifecro, and it's the decks that have been winning. It would be really interesting to see, like, out of the 2 players who didn't bring Warrior, both of them make it through to the semifinals, finals day.
Yeah, Patron Warrior hasn't had as much success as we've been seeing throughout at least the weekend that we normally see in these types of tournaments. So players really starting to learn how to play against Patron a little bit better, also taking their decks a little bit better against Patron. And Strifecro, once again, without Patron in his lineup, is going to take a 3-0. So he's going to move on to the winner's match. Dart will move down to the loser's match. He's not out of it yet. He'll still have a chance to fight for his tournament life. But the next game coming up is going to be Weasel, who was the EU qualifier number 8 winner, versus Roger, who was the NA qualifier number 7 winner. Of course, both these players had really grueling matchups throughout their qualifier, and they're going to be looking to come in and prove themselves. Guys, keep in mind, make sure you head over to geico.onog.gg throughout the day. You can enter into for your chance to win an official TSM PC. You can also get a Geico quote, and doing those things really helps Geico, who's the title sponsor for this event, get a good grasp on how many people are supporting them getting into the esports world. So it really helps us out, and if you guys enjoy the content that we're bringing you, then it really helps you out as well. So we are going to go to a quick break, but don't go anywhere, guys. The next matchup between Weasel and Roger will continue right after this.